eLearnChat, and we're just doing a pre-show right now. We're going through the shots real quickly. We've got with us Shannon Tipton today. Should be well known to you. If not, you will meet her today. And Linda Joy, she's with us as well, our co-host.
Hello.
And we're just going through shots right now. Sound checks have been good. He's going to make a quick shot fix right now, and then we're going to get going. Just making some small adjustments. This is what we do. We do a lot of adjustments every week. Just adjust. Our life is a little micro adjustment.
That is life, isn't it?
It is life. Just little micro adjustments. And occasionally a macro one. Are we good? Okay, we're good. So we're going to start with Linda and my shot, and then we will introduce you. You are the Chief Learning Rebel, so we will introduce you that way. And I think we're about good to go. Ready? Want to count us down? Hi, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat. We're talk, it's knowledge, and we're going to do some talking today. Well, we've got with us today our co-host, Linda Joy. And like I always say, Linda, pretty in Spanish. Joy, a pleasure to work with. Linda, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Rick.
And I was joking before show, because right before we came into the studio, the little water went down the wrong way. I was like, it's always so much fun. All the things you don't really expect, and just one little drop, that's enough to knock you out. But anyway, we are here. Let's start with our intro. We are back, and today we're joined by Shannon Tipton. She is the Chief Learning Rebel. I almost said the wrong thing. Chief Learning Rebel. I almost said officer. Rebel. I like Rebel better, actually. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
We are doing well, and thank you so much because you came in last moment. We had a cancellation, an emergency cancellation, and you just went, I'm in. No problem. So we appreciate that.
Oh, no worries. I'm happy to do it.
That's good. Well, we haven't seen each other in, 3 weeks? Maybe?
Oh, at least. It feels like forever.
Yeah, it's been a while. We saw you at the TLDC show, and we interviewed you a little bit over there, mostly about the show and stuff. And there's always something going on with you. There's always something interesting, new. And what is the life of a Chief Learning Rebel?
Well, I do keep busy, that's for sure. What's new is next week I'm going to be in Beijing, and I'm going to be at the ATD China Summit.
Interesting.
So I'm really looking forward to that.
Wow, is that your first trip there?
It is, actually. I've been to Asia on a few occasions, but it's my first time into China, so I'm very excited.
Interesting. Yeah, ATD and China. Wow, they're expanding all over the place.
They are. They're just everywhere. Watch out. Here they come.
Here they come. So what is the ATD Summit in China about?
Well, it's about innovation in learning this year. And so one of the topics that I'm going to be talking about is modernized learning, specifically around blended learning and flipped learning. So the group is very interested in how we can take a different approach to bringing learning into the classroom and beyond the walls of the classroom. So that's pretty much what I'm going to be discussing with them, and I'm really looking forward to having that discussion.
Well, it's interesting. You've been around e-learning for a long time and training. Would you say that e-learning has really met its promise like everybody thought 20, 30 years ago?
Well, that's a good question, and I think it has. It's interesting. We just had this debate last night, and there are a lot of people out there who have some unkind words to say about e-learning in general, and I think that it's because of the people behind the tool, not necessarily the tool itself. Mm-hmm. So I think our imaginations have broadened when it comes to e-learning now, where we have more gamification, more challenges, more logic, more problem solving in e-learning now, which before we didn't. So I think where the expansion has been, where the expectations have been met, is now how we're using the tool, whereas before, and still today to a certain extent, it still is where people are dropping in PowerPoint presentations and putting a click next button in there, which is unfortunate. But again, that's the human behind the tool. It's not the tool itself. So I think that there are still a lot of possibilities, but I am seeing some really good things, with e-learning right now, and it's very exciting. I think there's still tons of potential, which we haven't tapped into.
Well, it's funny because I actually think that e-learning was better 10 years ago than it is now. Not necessarily because of the tools, though the tools have been simplified a lot.
Right.
I think it's because they had more budgets in those days, and they had people dedicated to building the e-learning, not the IDs. The IDs, poor IDs have been saddled with everything, and they're not developers usually. They're not graphic artists, and they're not authors, so they're in a place that they're not all that familiar with, and they've done a good job considering, but they're usually stuck in a place where they do it all. And I think that's done a lot to hurt the reputation of e-learning, if you will. Not sure if that's going to change anytime soon, but in the old days we had developers they were the authors. Then you had the writers and the instructional designers. Then you had your graphic artists, and they all worked as teams to build the e-learning. It was a little more fun. Today, not so much, and I think that's what I see as kind of where it hasn't really met what it could. Though there are still some very good courses being developed out there, and some of them are great. And then, of course, you've got the clients who don't want anything fancy; they want it quick, fast, get it out the door. We don't care, which takes away from the.
Shannon, that seems to be like where you like to come in and figure out why isn't it functioning, doing a group head scratch, as you sometimes call it.
Right. Yeah, I think so. And I think that just because the client says that we want it fast doesn't mean it can't be good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we have inherently separated fast and good, and I don't think we have to do that. I think with some of the tools that we have right now, we can do both, even though there are some budgetary concerns or constrictions, rather, that are out there. So maybe you don't have Steven Spielberg out there creating your video for you.
Oh, you're
but
reading my
that's not
mind.
to say that it still can't be good.
You're reading my mind on that, because I was just thinking Steven Spielberg. A lot of them want fast. Fast isn't the issue, I think. It's when they start saying, I want Steven Spielberg and fast.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, well, Steven
Right.
Spielberg takes 2 to 4 years to make one movie. And then they look at you like, we don't have that kind of time. Yes, but if you want Steven Spielberg quality production, it takes longer than a week.
It does, and you're right about that. And I think also where we fail as true business partners in L&D is that we don't communicate that message well enough.
Mm-hmm.
But we also don't communicate what we can do, because
Right.
you can do some good things in a week.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, technology today, you've got a video studio at the end of your hand, so there's no reason why we aren't using that. So I think that we're failing in our messaging in a lot of times, and that's some of the conversations that I have with some of the clients that I have. It's, here's what we can do, and it can be really great. You don't need to spend $1 bazillion and hire a video director for this.
Right. And also part of the problem is I think that people say we want it interactive, but then what they really want is a ton of clicking. Not necessarily interactive, but just, okay, you've got 10 bullets on a screen, click on each one. Oh, 1, 2, 3. And it's painful.
That's what it is painful. That's what I call engaging the mouse and not the brain. Which one do you want?
Yeah, squeak.
Right.
That is funny.
And it's true. They don't want to engage the brain that much. They just like make it interactive. Now, we're seeing a trend in the opposite with some of our clients where they'll give us so many clicks anymore. Thank you. Because it does get
Right.
ridiculous showing something 10 times, and you just go, "What was there any real purpose
Click,
other
click.
than slowing it down?" No.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a trend towards, and I think Linda's seen it. Linda does a lot of e-learning narrations and voiceovers. And there's a trend to a lot of people not to put voiceover in, which I think is even more insane, because then you lose even that emotional quality of sound, and that goes away. So
Right.
that kind of
You
hamstrings.
lose, you lose the interpretatory aspect. You
Yeah.
lose the arc of the story.
Yeah, and you
And
lose,
a huge part of the communication.
and Linda, you lose all the beautiful times you say, click next to continue, click next to continue, click next to continue. So,
Well, now, I think that brings up a really good question. So, Linda, do you think that that's because they're confusing voiceover with reading what's on a screen?
Absolutely. I think the worth of the voice talent is not seen as it should be. They think, Peter down from the copy room, he can just read this script and it will be fine. They don't realize that it is a talent and it is a profession to interpret script, to bring script home, to take script and talk to the listener.
Mm-hmm.
well, that's because, well, that goes down to another issue, writing. The writers, a lot of times, a lot of instructional designers can't write, period. Some do, some don't. And when they're tasked to write, they kind of fall into a tech writing mode, where they're writing facts, they're writing information. It's a manual. It's not anything that's engaging or that is talking to anybody. They even write it that way. I always keep saying, write it at the person. You. What are you going to do next? What, you. Rather than, and now at this company, we will do this. We? Who's we? And why are we all doing this? I think we lack that personalization. So the e-learning or training many times becomes impersonal. And then nobody's engaged. It's like, yeah, right, whatever. And people just hit.
Right.
And of course, the other trend is force people to watch the whole screen and never hit enter, even though they've read past it 4 times already. Because if you're a fast reader, you're stuck at the lowest level of watching everything be read slowly. And maybe you're faster than that. But you can't hit that next button because it's not there.
Right, and they've locked the screen, and that's so frustrating. It's so frustrating, and that's a battle that I have with instructional designers and clients alike.
Yeah.
Because there's a general lack of trust. Is really what it boils down to, because they say, well, we don't trust them not to skip ahead. Well, then you have bigger issues.
Right.
If you don't trust them not to skip ahead, you've got bigger cultural issues that beyond what this e-learning can solve for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I figure some people will skip ahead, some won't.
Yeah.
My favorite is we've had people actually call in, and these are big companies or big government organizations, and they'll say, somebody's been waiting here for 90 minutes without pressing the next button. And I ask, and why? Well, they don't know what to do next. I go, fire them. You've got the wrong person. They literally sitting there, a guy with a doctorate, mind you. I mean, a doctorate to boot. Sitting there, 90 minutes, just waiting. And finally he says, should I do something? Yes, walk out the door and don't come back. I mean, seriously, 90 minutes waiting. And happy to wait. Just da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
But that is because also connectivity has not been created between the learner.
They're not even listening. Yeah, they're not listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're checking their email or what have you. They found a way around the boring scripting of the e-learning program, which is the other part. And I think, Linda, you said a really good word earlier, and that was about evoking emotion. And I think that's the inherent issue with e-learning, that it's difficult to evoke that kind of emotion, the connectivity, with the screen. And you have to work harder at that. And that's where I say, it's all about our imaginations and what we can do with our imaginations in regards to e-learning development. And it does take a different skill set. Not every instructional designer is cut out for that.
No, because it's a very special, it's a specific way of learning. It's well, like I said, it's connecting with the learner and together bringing a solution. It's not just saying, I'm here, you need to learn this. It needs to be more, how can I help you get to the next level? I'm with you, I trust you.
Well, we did a course once on sexual harassment, and it was hilarious because we weren't allowed to talk about sex. And I was going, how do we talk about sexual harassment if we're not allowed? No, don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. Right. Okay. So those are really kind of interesting corporate challenges, and you just kind of shake your head, hit your head on
Right.
the wall, and make. I think it was you that was talking about hitting your head on the wall, right? The last time we talked, head on wall, hit, boom. I thought it was you. No?
Me?
Maybe not. But it's so true. Sometimes you just want to hit your head on the wall and go, really? Is that what we have to do? We did a violence in the workplace one not long ago where we weren't allowed to talk about violence, show it, or make any sounds that were violent.
Oh my
So it had
goodness.
no emotional impact whatsoever. Nobody learns anything from it because when you're talking about violence in the workplace, you kind of got to get the adrenaline up so that they realize, hey, this could happen. What do we do when it happens?
Right.
What are you going to run to your e-learning course and go, what do I do next? Oh, I got it. Hit next to continue. Hey, I'm safe. I mean, really.
Problem solved.
Wow.
So, yes, tales from the dark side. What can I say?
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, and then that's why, a lot of organizations see e-learning as not meeting the potential, is because they inflict the pain upon themselves. Again, it's the human behind the tool that is failing. It's not the tool or even people like you or I. It's
And many times it's the
it's-
management who runs the people behind the tool, who they have very strange requirements many times. And what happens is everybody loses because they're not getting the full impact of the training. Now, I could see
Right.
in some cases training doesn't have to be emotional because you can't get too emotional doing data entry, for example, showing somebody how to enter a spreadsheet. But there are so many other things that are being trained in corporate or governmental agencies where you need a little bit of emotion. You need something to make the user relate to what they're going through, put it in context, like you say. And without that, not much is left. Now, Shannon, how do you go about in what you do? Because you do a lot of strategy work. You work with as a strategist more often than not, correct?
yes. Hmm.
How do you approach companies and agencies in taking a step back and looking at what they're getting out of e-learning?
Well, for me, it all starts with the overall organizational goal. What is it that you're trying to achieve? And you'll be surprised, a lot of times they haven't even thought about that. They haven't connected where we want learning to support our overall organizational goals. So the conversation usually starts with, what is the expectation behind this e-learning beyond learning objectives? So if we put something in place, regardless of it's one course or if it's a holistic solution, then what is the end result? How is it going to help your business? And if we can't hammer out how it's going to help your business, then perhaps it doesn't belong there at all. So those are some of the conversations that we're having. And those are tough conversations, especially when you're talking with people who are very old school in the fact where they say, well, I went to school and I learned it. Why can't they go to school here in an organization and learn it? And it's just not transferable.
Right. And everybody has a different learning experience, different schools, different life experiences. And then there are a lot of people who just want to get into a company and be spoon-fed, which is a whole other issue. But regardless of that, it is interesting because there is a disconnect, like you were saying earlier, between everyone almost. I mean, it's just like there's a lot of disconnect. Now, there are some very well-run companies, but there are a lot that do have disconnects when it comes to training. And one thing I've said for years is people don't do training because they want to, it's because they have to.
Right.
And so that's the initial, I think, bad premise, because by having the have to idea, then they go, we have to spend because we don't want to, because we have to. Rather than take the approach of, hey, if we do this, we're going to be much better off with productivity and everything else, especially in the areas of customer service or anything that's outward bound, it'll make a big difference.
Well, that's why we do start that conversation with, what are you trying to achieve as an organization through this? It's not about passive learning anymore. We really want people to be active participants in their own development, in their own professional development. And that includes putting in some good self-directed learning. And so it's a package. What I try to communicate with the clients is that when training becomes punitive in nature And every mandatory training you've got on the books is punitive in nature just because it's mandatory. So then there is no motivation to go in and learn anything further because we've all been taught that it's punishment.
Right.
So now it's about putting out something that is self-directed, that is exciting, and that will truly help them do their jobs and help them be better people. So you have to have that blend. I mean, I understand that the government, it's not going to go away, and regulation's not going to go away. So how do we augment that with something that becomes culturally significant for your business? You know, so those are some of the deeper thoughts that a lot of organizations are having right now, and some of my clients are having right now, because I ask them that difficult question: what does this mean?
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes I'm not afraid to say that, you know, this is not going to help you. What you have in mind is not going to take your business further from a learning perspective. And if you're okay with that, then I guess I'm okay with that. But let's all be honest with each other.
I remember one time we went to a very large car manufacturer. I won't name it. But we had a meeting with them, and we were representing at the time Macromedia. This is before they were part of Adobe. And the guy who was running this big group of e-learning and training individuals says, e-learning has failed every time in this company. And I said, why? And he goes, well, it just doesn't work. I go, how involved were you? Well, I wasn't. Well, maybe that's part of the problem. And,
Right.
and I don't have a problem with the emperor has no clothes. I tend to go in rather blunt. And it doesn't work for everybody. We didn't get that one. We came in number 2, which means lost. But the thing is, we had to ask a lot of tough questions because this guy had failed 3 times at what he wanted us to do. And when you hear somebody failed 3 times, why did they fail? What causes a failure? And what it was there was exactly what you talked about. It was a cultural issue. And they didn't get it. They didn't get that it just wouldn't miraculously change.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's work. You still have to do the work. You still have to think ahead a little bit. If you don't know why you're doing the training, then there's a good chance you won't know why you got the results you got.
Yeah.
And
It's like Shannon says, learning is not just to learn. Learning will enhance the business. I mean, the bottom line, people come together, work together better. It saves time and money.
yeah. And the funniest thing is when you talk about learning, most people go, some of the sometimes most hard-headed people don't want to learn, just like engineers don't want to learn new technology.
Right.
You just kind of shake your head and go, but you're in a technology area which changes weekly. You need to learn. No. We're going to stick to the old ways. So, yeah, there are a lot of cultural and business reasons why things don't always go as well as they could. And yet I agree with you that the promise of e-learning in a lot of places has been met. I don't think it's as met globally as well as we could have in terms of all corporations. And no, I think we're still pretty far away from that. The learning management systems haven't really gotten to the level where they're truly useful, but not necessarily the LMS's fault, because the companies don't really do anything other than track. They don't analyze.
That's it.
Yeah.
Again, it's the human behind the tool, you know.
Yeah.
So, and there are some good LMSs out there that really are trying to make an impact and trying to make a difference, you know. But when you have an organization or a person within L&D who really doesn't understand what it means to go from beyond today and into tomorrow with it, then you're still stuck with that butts and seats type of measurements that every LMS can do. You know, and you really want to be able to grow and expand with your LMS. And a lot of training departments right now, they don't know the right questions to ask, and it's not because, you know, they're bad at what they do. They just are unsure about where all of this is going.
Right. Now,
Yes.
how did you wind up becoming a rebel? Because you're actually very nice, you're very sweet, you're very smart, and yet there's this rebel inside. Tell us about the rebel.
Well, the rebel started a long time ago, really, you know, and I think it comes from the fact that I didn't start out in training. I actually started out in operations, and I did a lot of work in the restaurant business, and, you know, I worked my way up through the restaurant industry. And when I did decide to make a shift into training, it was just because I really wanted to impact people, and I knew that impacting people through training would also help the business. And so I've always had that sort of business mindset in whatever position that I've had. And it really has helped me to ask challenging questions with any organization that I've been in. And the name just sort of evolved about itself. I think a couple of organizations ago, when they just said, "Shannon, you're just so stubborn," and it's like, yes, because I want the same things you want. I want the business to be successful, and I don't want to waste your money. And so let's work on this together. Yeah. So even way back in the day, I was trying to align training with business, and subsequently the whole Rebel thing, emerged from that.
Well, now you brought up a good point. I didn't realize you had an operations background because
Yeah.
Operations background, not operationals. Make up words. For years, I've been saying if learning people don't learn operations, they won't have jobs. And
Yep.
without operations, they won't have jobs because, in essence, if you don't know how the company runs, you won't know what to train for.
And what to improve on.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. And what to improve on. And I ask learning professionals everywhere I go, when was the last time you read your organizational annual report? When was the last time you read the P&L statement? And a lot of them just give me blank looks because they've never done that. They've never been asked to do it. And they say, well, it's not required. And I'm like, well, it shouldn't be required. It should be the curiosity in you about where your business is headed. How else are you going to help the VP of sales realize their sales numbers if you cannot read a P&L and know where sales are headed in the next year?
Yes.
True. It's very true. And it's very interesting. This is something that we've seen a lot. And we've seen learning departments decimated by layoffs, by this, by that. Mm. And more, sometimes it's really a financial issue, but a lot of times it's, okay, let's get rid of those who know nothing about our business or who don't contribute to the business because they're not perceived as providing any value. And again, that's more often than not because there's a sense of kind of academia in some, and there's nothing wrong with academia, but in the business world, it doesn't belong. It's too slow.
No,
things change too fast. Academia does not change quickly at all. And that's one area that we see as issues that a lot of learning people want to be academics. They're in the wrong place if you're in a business or even government agency because things have to get done. And that usually means you have to have a sense of operations, what happens. Now, I didn't realize you came from a restaurant background because that's tough work. And most people don't realize that is one of the hardest jobs you could have. One, you're dealing with the public. That's rough. Two, you're dealing with a nonstop movement of stuff.
Yeah.
You can't wait. It's not as, I'll get you your food in about 2 hours when I'm ready. No.
No, yeah, you don't have 6 months to create a training program.
No. So that's and some of the best restaurants, especially the large chains, spend a lot of time training, and you could tell because they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really drove home to me the just-in-time learning, and when I went from a business to customer element to a business to business organization, the screech of the slowdown was almost impossible for me to take. I was ready to go. Do it. Let's get work done. And then from B to B, it's like, no, we have some more time. You can take a breath. I'm like, wait a second. No, we still don't. Because you still have people who are doing their jobs and they want to do their jobs to the best of their abilities, and we can't wait 6 months to make that happen. So my sense of urgency took me from the restaurants to a B2B, industry. And I think it really helped me, and it helps me today, because of that sense of urgency and really wanting to help people solve the problems that they have right now, not 6 months from now and not a year from now. But although that's not to say not to plan 6 months and a year from now. So my last corporate job, I planned the training strategy 3 years in advance. And sure, it changed because 3 years is a long time.
Sure.
But a business operates like that. Business goals operate like that. So the training has to operate like that as well, but also be nimble enough to flex and adapt when necessary.
Yes, because your background says you're used to solving things on the fly as they happen, figuring out what's going wrong and making change. And so I can imagine those two, the planning ahead and that unique quality of solving things on the fly would be are unique things that you bring to the table.
I like to think so. But I think it would behoove any L&D professional right now in any area that you're in, be it a director or a manager or a coordinator or instructional designer or whatever you label yourself, is to be acutely aware of what's happening in the business around you.
It's a really good point. We've been making this point for about 7 years on this podcast of wherever you work, know your business, at least know parts of the business, know what counts, because when things change, if you're not changing with it and you don't know why it changed and you have no idea what's coming, you're probably going. And it's a shame.
Right.
And I've heard a lot of L&D people say, I got laid off, I don't even know why. Well, there's probably a lot of reasons why, and it may not be anything about them themselves. And mind you, sometimes it is strictly you're a number, and that happens. That you can't do anything about that. But a lot of times it is you don't know enough about the business, and other people have realized that. And if you work in a bank, learn banking, learn the different kinds of banking. If you work in manufacturing, it's a good idea to get familiar with manufacturing processes and why things happen and what you have to do. And also, you said it earlier, curiosity. My gosh, have some curiosity. If you're not curious, you'll never figure out what's going on. You won't care because you have no curiosity about what's going on. And that's one of the things I think that kills people a lot is they can sit, but they don't think about, get curious about why does this work? Why does this happen? Grab it, touch it, feel it. What does it do? It's a different mindset.
Yeah, it really is. I think on the flip side of it, though, let's talk about this, is, excuse me, is marketing ourselves. I think there are a lot of training professionals, learning professionals out there who do good work and who are providing a value to their organizations, yet they don't talk about themselves enough.
And I think part of the problem there is people don't want to show off, they don't want to brag, they don't want to feel like, but you know what, I think it comes down to when you're good, most people kind of know it. They know that, that person's pretty good, that person knows something, or that person really helped us with this or that. But I understand what you're saying, because the marketing, I think it's tough for a lot of individuals to say, hey, I'm really good at this.
Yeah.
Because then people go, oh, look at that person bragging. But on the other hand, I think you do have to promote yourself, if nothing else, in your work, that you've done something, remind people every so often, hey, remember when we did this project? That might help, but you're right. Most people, actually, I think that holds true for almost any department. People don't market themselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anybody who would be considering, let's say, working with Shannon, they want to know how will she approach it. Well, the great thing, Shannon, I mean, you write blogs, you've published a book, you've co-written books. You really, through that, you give the reader a kind of insight how you approach things. I love your witty way of writing. That's just something I always wish I could do, so it kind of stands out to me. Little expressions like we do a group head scratch, stuff like that. I go, oh my goodness, I love her thinking. I'd love to work with her.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that if more L&D people put themselves out there, then they wouldn't sit in a dark corner and become mushrooms,
Yes.
And
but that is L&D. That is L&D.
I think there are other departments that do talk about themselves. The VP of marketing, he's talking about himself. So's the salesperson. So it's the finance guy, but the finance guy is directly tied usually to whoever is in charge. So they know what they're doing. And we are the friendly and nice part of HR. So we don't normally talk about ourselves, and a lot of times it's uncomfortable for us to talk about ourselves, but we should be doing more of it. We should be thinking more along the lines of being content marketers than anything else, and making people
Yes.
aware of these are the great things that we do, and using talents to put out little learning trailers about things that we do, and writing those blogs and sending out those little marketing pieces that remind people that training is about helping you, and this is how we have helped you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I always said L&D when it's not working well, you're actually lost and depressed. That's a totally different, and you don't want that. But it's true that you make a good point. I also don't think L&D should be under HR. So that's another thing. There's a lot of reasons why it shouldn't, because that's not operational. HR is not an operational department. They're a paper department. It's very different. It's not. It's more paperwork and doing all the other things, but to me, it's not operational. They may argue the point, and I've had that argument with HR friends, but it's not an operational build something department usually.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I've had the position both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked under HR and I've worked under operations, and I'll tell you, I was much more effective under operations than I was HR.
Yes.
It's a different mandate.
It just makes sense to me. Why would you put L&D with HR? I don't understand.
I think.
Well, I guess because they see it as a people, it's soft skills, and a lot of times, and all of that typically falls under HR. But HR has a completely different agenda, and HR doesn't speak for training very well.
Yes.
Right. And the LMSs are run many times, not really by HR per se, though they may be. It's an IT function which then gets administered many times by HR. And I guess I could see that as for the LMS part of it, but for the instructional designer and for the developers, I would say you could have a centralized department, but make it distributed as far as the operations people where they get attached to. Because they'll be, like you said, they'll be more successful working in operations because now they're influencing bottom lines. That's a very big difference. And that usually makes them think much more differently than somebody who's pushing the paper side of it. When they've got to deal with things that improve training, which improve customer service or manufacturing or distribution or packaging or anything else that goes outbound, that makes a huge difference to the bottom line.
Yes.
I like to think of it as how many touch points are you away from where the problem might be, and usually that's with the front line or with management. So how many touch points is training away from that? So if we're in operations, then if I'm in training, then maybe I've got a touch point of a director of operations or a VP of operations before I can get a decision on something. So that's maybe one or two touch points.
Right.
If I'm in HR, then I've got to go through HR, who then has to go through operations, who then may have to go through somebody else. So you're upwards to 3 or 4 different touch points before you even find out that a problem is occurring. And by then it's too late.
And then you have the decision by committee. And then nothing ever happens.
Right. Oh.
Let's all make a decision. And I've been in so many meetings where let's make a decision and eventually it comes down to let's not decide on anything yet. We'll give ourselves another 3 months.
Right.
You just go, okay.
We'll make a decision to make a decision.
That's right, later on. Well, Shannon, I think we've revolutionized a little bit again today, as always. I'm so glad to see you again, and I'd like to have you back on after your China trip to tell us a little bit about what that experience was like.
Yes.
I would love to.
Because that's
I would
actually,
love to. I think that would be fun.
It's really interesting. I mean, as much as we love to hail China as they're a great manufacturing company. Culturally, they're a disaster, but that's another issue. A lot of people die in China. Let's not talk about that, right?
Yeah.
But they are amazing in what they can build. I mean, if they change their structure a little bit, it's amazing what they could do, what they've done considering. So I'd love to hear your ideas on what you saw and what they think about and everything else, because they have done a lot. They have done a lot. I mean, they're right now the manufacturing, basically, country of the world. I think about
Right.
90% of what's manufactured is manufactured there. That's a lot.
Yes.
It is, and I was really excited and a little bit surprised when because I gave them a couple of topics, and I figured they would want to talk about something along the lines of micro-learning or instructional design. And when they came back and said they wanted to hear more about modernized learning and blended learning, I was a little surprised by that, but in a good way.
Well, it shows you're thinking ahead. So that's a good thing.
It
And
is a
actually,
good thing.
have you noticed that I think the trend, we can talk about this next time, but the trend seems to be really towards blended everywhere.
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It does, and I'm a little surprised by that. Maybe because I was doing blends way long time ago,
Yeah.
and I'm just confused as to why is this hot now? Because we were kind of doing that before. So it's really, I'm really interested and intrigued with this.
Well, it's sort of funny. That kind of goes hand in hand with how many people say that e-learning is new. It's only been new for 40 years, but it's been around for a long time. I remember doing e-learning back in the 70s when I worked at Citibank, and it was green screen. It wasn't exactly interactive, but it was e-learning. That was back in the
Yeah.
old days. It was just one screen, and you interacted by hitting a key somewhere, a submit key, and then you went to the next thing. But that was e-learning back then. And then in the 80s, it got a little more interactive, 90s, a little bit more. And now we have the technology to actually be interactive, and we're not really using it like we could. We still have bandwidth issues in companies, but we can do so much more. You mentioned video up front. Video is powerful, and it's not as expensive as people think.
No.
And it's fun.
It is. It is. Especially if you can catch your own people doing things. That's really what's cool. You put a iPhone or any smartphone in their hands and have them videotape what they're doing, and then that becomes part of a bigger program or even part of a micro-learning object. How cool is that? And then that in of itself builds excitement around learning because, hey, look at me, I'm the star. Who doesn't like that?
Yeah, that's true.
That is true interactivity
That is true.
because they're part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Shannon, when are you heading to China?
Saturday.
Oh, this Saturday. Wow, exciting.
Wow.
Well, you
Yeah,
have a
Saturday, and I arrive on Monday.
do you have to stop overnight somewhere, or?
No, I have a very short layover in Dallas, but from
Okay.
Dallas it's a direct flight.
Well, that's not bad. And then you have, of course, you cross the international date line and all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
I did New Year's twice once. We left Hong Kong on New Year's, and in the plane, the pilot wished everybody another Happy New Year's because we just had a second day we went back a day, and now it was New Year's again. It was funny. That was China Airlines. It was actually fun.
Very cool.
It was cool. I was about almost 17 at the time, and it was really fun going, this is cool. We just had 2 New Years. So it's fun. Well, you have a safe travels to you. Enjoy the trip. It's going to be probably a
Yes.
trip of a lifetime, so it should be fun.
Have a great trip.
And
Yeah,
and,
thank you. Thank
and then
you.
we'll see you when you get back.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll have to report in.
Roving reporter.
Roving reporter. All right. Well, Shannon, hey, thanks a lot for coming on again. Safe travels. Enjoy your trip in China. And we will see you soon when you
Yep.
get back. And Linda's always a pleasure. And for you folks watching,
Yes.
please subscribe, give us feedback. We'll have show notes and we'll have links to Shannon's information there so you can get a hold of her. And have a great weekend, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.